Hello everybody, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I want to talk a little bit about how you can learn from tutorials and what the best, in my opinion, the best mindset is when other people present you with some information about music production or any subject matter that it's so technical, like music production, for example. The reason I want to do this is because I had a somewhat of a nasty comment thread left on one of my older videos about progressive bass sequences, those kind of things. And somebody talked about resampling and how that can prevent timing issues with your bass line. And I challenged him on that because from his first comment he was kind of aggressive and he wasn't really, you know, being gentle, to being open to learn things, even though he said he was. He was very defensive. So what I decided to do is I actually decided to look at his profile and look at his tracks, and I saw that he is actually a very good producer. But the one thing that, in my opinion, was a little bit weird about this track is that his bass line had some timing issues. And so I challenged him on that, and then he became even more defensive, started insulting me, so I had to delete the comment and I blocked him off my YouTube channel so he can no longer comment. I don't want to deal with that. But what I do want to present to you is first what's going on, and then my opinion on how you should look at tutorials and how you can absorb information the best from them. So without further ado, let's get right into that. Alright, before we actually go into what's happening, I wanted to kind of show you what's going on. So I have downloaded, here I have my own track, my latest track that I'm working on. It's still not released, but what you can see is that it has a decent kick and bass. We can see that the first kick has a nice transient here, and that the bass is nicely sitting here, no weird phase issues. The second one has some phase issues, so that's something I need to work on. And then the kick has very slight issues with the phase overlapping. Actually, you can see that there's slight offset here, but I don't think that is something I would need to worry about. The only real problem I can see here is with this transient as opposed to this one. They're all slightly to the bottom, and you can see that that might cause some issues, which you might want to prevent, but it's no big deal. That the whole waveform itself is actually nice and fluid, so it will sound nice. Now I have his track, and the track is a little bit different. It isn't a 1/16 note bass line. It's actually a sustained bass note here. So you can't really judge this part here. This is all very nice, and you can see it's nice and loud, and it's overall the track itself. I'm not going to mention him because I don't want to send any hate to him or anything, and I don't want you to you know, find him and start sending him nasty comments or whatever. But what you can see is that the first transient is again still okay, very nice kick transient here, very well produced. And then we go on to the second kick, and you can see that it's all gone wonky, and it's really following, you know, the waveform that was happening here is still kind of continuing here. But you might ask, how is that happening if you're resampling your bass line? Well, the problem is what you do after you resample your bass line. And resampling your bass line can only help you until you hit the next phase of production. And what I mean by that is, if you resample your bass line, it's only going to, for example, let's say I have this bass line here, which I created earlier. Very simple bass line. I've actually gone over this on my channel before. It sounds nice, has some processing on it, and nice heavy sub. If I now resample this into a new audio track by selecting this as our audio input and then listening to it and recording it, we can see we have some post ringing, which is what this is called when the bass line's lower frequency kind of continues into the next element, even though the element itself is already stopping to play. And that's caused by the filter plugin here. This is a filter, and filters cause those post ringing things to happen. So what he suggests you do is you just cut it off, add a fade, and that will have fixed the problem. And it kind of looks like it has, but it has only fixed the problem for this channel. As you can see, my recording channel automatically generated with an EQ, with a low pass filter, which is usually not a problem for me, because usually this is for any track, so there will be effects, there will be lead sounds, whatever I have on an audio track, and it won't be a problem. But for bass, these kind of filters are a problem. And I see a lot of people kind of high passing their master channel, or they use multiband compression on their master channel, or they use a plugin that they don't know has a filter in it. And they think now that the baseline is nicely cut off, so they won't have post ringing. But if we again record it, and just to show you that it's really that single filter here that's causing the problem, I'm just going to disable everything else. I'll even disable these idle bands, which aren't really doing anything. And we'll record from track number 22, and you will see that again we have this slight bit of post ringing here, and you can see that this part is also extending from the actual fade. You can see here it nicely fades out here, it dips more than it should, and it also has a long time to actually come to a complete silence. So that's post ringing. Now there's two people who kind of watch my channel. I've noticed there's the big majority that you know, they absorb the information and are very critical of it, and they don't take anything for granted, and they test things out, and they come back with their conclusions, leave them in the comments, talk about what they experience when they're working with sound. And that's the majority of the people. And then there's a few people who assume that either I or they are right, that whatever I tell them is 100% right in every case that you can imagine. And that's obviously not the case. Every time I do a tutorial, it's only going to be, the information is only going to be relevant to the material I'm doing a tutorial on. If I'm showing off how you can process a bass sample using this bass line, it's only going to be relevant for this particular bass sound. If I have a different bass line, let's say a square bass, there might be a completely different way of doing it, and doing it the way I'm showing off here might actually introduce some problems. For example, if I say that you should add a filter, you might want to test that out first and see if you're not going to run into problems like these. And there's this small group of people who will argue with you in the comments without doing testing first. And the most important thing when you're doing like very complex things like this audio stuff, or any complex scientific real thing that has math in it, is to test what you're doing. And from this test, it shows that what we're doing, that by resampling the bass, you cannot completely negate the effect of timing issues, because you might have a filter on it or a master compressor, and therefore you shouldn't say that by resampling your bass line you're going to get rid of all timing issues, because that's simply not true. So you really need to watch out with even my tutorials, that or actually anybody's tutorials, that the concept I'm explaining only really applies to the things that I'm explaining it on, and only really works for what I've tested it on. And you should always test those things yourself. That's how you learn things. That's how you start understanding the material you're working with, and that's what sets apart a good producer from a great producer. Sure, you can write a great track with minimal knowledge about mixing, and you can look up some tutorials and apply some things, but you're going to run into these issues, and they won't harm anybody on the dance floor. Nobody's going to say, oh wait, his kick is off center, I'm not going to dance to this. So it's not wrong. And to be honest with you, his tracks are actually very good, very well produced. The only real issue I can find was this weird click here, and that was directly related to the topic he was talking about. So I decided to make this video kind of calling that out. Again, I don't want to bring him any hate, but I just wanted to kind of clear up how I think you should be looking at tutorials and those kind of things. And with that being said, if you enjoyed this kind of slightly different video, feel free to leave a like, and if you're new here, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.